we tend to treat human nature like it's a completely settled debate. You know the framework, the whole nature versus nurture thing.
Right, yeah, like it's a math equation we've already solved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We might argue about the percentages, like is it 60% nature and 40% nurture, but we generally agree that deep down there is this fixed essence to who you are.
A baseline personality.
Yeah, like you're born with a certain disposition, maybe some innate sense of morality, and while your environment might, polish the edges or add a few scratches over the years, the core material doesn't actually change.
Right, it's solid.
But, okay, let's unpack this. What if you aren't made of concrete at all? What if, at your absolute core, you are nothing but a completely blank mirror?
Which is frankly an incredibly unsettling concept to sit with.
It really is.
Because if you are just a mirror, it means everything you consider to be your personal identity, your moral compass, your deeply held virtues.
Stuff that makes you you.
Exactly. It means none of that is actually yours. It's just a reflection of whatever room you happen to be standing in at the time.
And that is exactly what we are tearing apart today on this deep dive. We are exploring a fascinating and honestly perspective-shifting 2024 essay by Xu.
And this was a translation edited by, just for context.
Right? Yeah, it's titled The Unpredictability of Human Nature. And listen, this isn't just some mild academic critique of behavioral psychology. It's a radical argument that claims there is zero inherent good or evil inside you. Like, literally none.
Right. It completely upends the traditional debate.
Yeah. The premise is essentially this. If you take an actual angel, a literal angel, and force them into an evil environment, they become a devil. And if you take a devil and place them in a good environment, they become an angel.
It forces a total reevaluation of how we judge ourselves and, how we judge each other. As you listen to this, try to keep an open mind because we really like to hold individuals strictly accountable for their moral failings.
Oh, absolutely. Or we praise them for being super kind.
Right. But if we accept the logic presented in this text, taking pride in our own virtue is completely misplaced.
So to understand how, the mechanics of how an environment can completely overwrite someone's supposedly permanent personality, we really have to look at how Xu defines a human being on a cosmic scale.
Yes, the scope here is massive. We have to talk about the holographic universe.
Right. And this concept, it's wild. It's the idea that a single flower embodies an entire world. Or, as the text says, a single leaf is a Bodhi.
And this is the foundational mechanism for everything else we'll discuss today.
I do want to pause on that word, though, Bodhi. Because in Buddhist philosophy, Bodhi refers to ultimate awakening, right? Or enlightenment.
Yes, exactly.
So the idea is that one tiny fragile leaf holds the complete infinite blueprint of universal truth. It doesn't just hold a piece of the puzzle. It holds the entire puzzle.
That's a great way to put it. And when you apply that holographic principle to a human being, it means you, as an individual, possess the entirety of cosmic potential within yourself right this very second.
Wait, so everything all at once?
Everything. It's not that you have the capacity to learn how to be good or bad over time. The text argues that you simultaneously possess a divine nature, a demonic nature, a Buddhic nature,
Wow.
a celestial nature, a human nature, an animal nature, a material nature, and a void nature.
You are just this vessel carrying every conceivable state of existence.
Exactly.
My brain naturally wants to visualize this structurally. So it makes me think of a massive audio mixing board. Like the kind you see in those high-end recording studios.
Oh, the ones spanning the entire desk?
Yeah, with the hundreds of sliders and knobs.
That's a really good analogy. And if we follow that, what's fascinating here is that this philosophy suggests every single human is born with the exact same mixing board pre-installed.
Right, so there is literally no difference between your board and, the board of the most revered saint in history.
The most reviled criminal.
Right. We all have the slider for saint, the slider for demon, the slider for animal. But here is the critical, almost terrifying twist, I think. You don't push your own sliders.
The environment does.
Yes, the environment pushes them. If you walk into a room characterized by sheer brutality, the environment just slams the demon and animal sliders all the way to maximum and drops humanity to zero.
Because the traits aren't given to you, they are already there, just forcefully activated by the surroundings.
Right. The text says, in the realm of gods, you are God. In the realm of beasts, you are a beast.
Which completely removes the ego from morality, if you really think about it.
How so?
Well, if your mixing board is completely identical to mine, then judging someone as fundamentally bad is scientifically and spiritually flawed, according to this author. It's entirely about context. They are simply residing in a bad context.
Okay, that sounds profound on a cosmic level, right?
Hmm.
But let's bring this down to reality. Because cosmic theories are great, but human history is super messy.
It is very messy.
So how does this mixing board actually function when we look at how people live and struggle and build societies? Like, what's the evidence?
Well, if we look at large-scale historical environments, the text argues we see undeniable uniformity in how human nature shifts. It points to very grounded, observable behaviors.
Like what?
For instance, in times of incessant warfare, entire populations become warlike. In times of extreme hunger and cold, people who would normally never break the law resort to stealing.
Okay, yeah. And that makes perfect sense from an evolutionary standpoint. I mean, if you are freezing and starving, the environment is threatening your actual existence.
It forces your hand.
Right. It reaches right past your polite, civilized sliders and pushes the animal survival slider to the top. I don't think many people would argue with that. But Zhu Feng goes further, and some of these cause and effect claims, they really made me stop and question the logic.
Which one stood out to you?
Well, the essay claims that in times of comfort and warmth, people indulge in lust. And it argues that when kindness is rampant, people become easily deceived.
Yeah.
And when laws are incredibly strict, people become cunning.
So, wait, is the underlying message here that being comfortable is somehow a moral failing?
Not necessarily.
Or like that we shouldn't strive for rampant kindness in society because it just turns everyone into a gullible target? And what about, say, a billionaire philanthropist?
Right. The exceptions.
Yeah, because I know plenty of people who grew up wealthy and comfortable who are incredibly kind and disciplined. How does this framework account for them?
That's a really crucial distinction to make. The text isn't necessarily attacking wealth or kindness as negative concepts. It's more of an objective observation of how the psychological mixing board adapts to external pressures.
Oh, okay. Explain that a bit more.
Let's take the rampant kindness example. Think about the mechanics of survival. If you live in an environment where absolutely everyone is aggressively kind, honest, and looking out for your best interests.
Which sounds lovely, by the way.
Mhm.
Right. It sounds ideal. But in that environment, your defensive mechanisms are no longer required. The environment pulls down your skepticism slider, your cunning slider, your guardedness. You become totally open.
Oh, I see.
Therefore, purely by the physics of that environment, you become easier to deceive. A sudden introduction of a bad actor would easily exploit that because the environment of total kindness has fundamentally altered your nature from skeptical to vulnerable.
Wow. Okay. So it's not that kindness is bad, it's that it literally reshapes your cognitive defenses.
Exactly.
And I suppose the strict law example operates on the exact opposite mechanism, right?
Precisely. If you are placed in a labyrinth of incredibly strict, punitive rules, pure obedience is often impossible. Or at least highly dangerous if you make a tiny mistake.
Right, because you're always terrified of tripping a wire.
Yes. So the pressure of that legal environment forces the human mind to adapt in order to survive. It pushes up the sliders for evasion, strategy, and manipulation. The text argues that the law doesn't create perfect citizens, it creates cunning survivors.
Okay, I see how the mechanism works now. It's entirely about the volatility of the environment dictating the survival strategy. And when you brought up the wealthy philanthropist earlier, it makes me think about how the essay frames status changes.
Yes, the transitions are key.
Right. It highlights that couples in poverty often share endless love, but wealth can bring constant discord. It specifically looks at the transition from poverty to wealth, or from civilian to official, or farmer to city dweller.
The transition itself is the catalyst. It's not that money inherently contains discord. It's that a drastic shift in status is a drastic shift in environment.
It's a completely new room.
Right. When you go from anonymity to massive fame, the new sycophants, endless resources, intense public scrutiny, all of that activates latent traits that were dormant when you were anonymous.
It really challenges you to audit your own behavior. Like, think about how you operate in different social circles. Are you the exact same person sitting in a high-pressure corporate board meeting as you are when you're visiting your hometown for the holidays?
Most people would say no.
Right. We like to think we have this core self that remains constant. But if you really analyze it, the vocabulary you use,
Yeah.
your patience levels, your assertiveness, it all morphs depending on who you were talking to.
And we often write that off as simply putting on a face or just being polite. But this philosophy suggests it goes much deeper. You aren't acting. Your nature is literally shifting in response to the stimuli of that new room.
That is so wild to think about.
And the most concentrated, potent form of this environmental pressure is when you carry the environment directly on your body.
Oh, you mean the uniform.
Yes, the uniform.
This is where the essay moves from broad historical trends to undeniable immediate proof. Because if our environment dictates our behavior, what happens when society assigns you a specific role and physically gives you the costume to match?
This is where the theory becomes observable science. Fwefeng points to experimental verification that demonstrates how rapidly and entirely this shift occurs. He references a really famous experiment involving 10 randomly selected individuals.
Right, right. 5 of these people are assigned the role of prison guards, and 5 are assigned the role of prisoners.
Yes.
And within a very short period, the essay notes that those dressed as guards became arrogant and domineering, while those dressed as prisoners became dejected and submissive.
What is critical to understand about these psychological mechanics is the randomness of the selection. These people were blank slates.
They didn't have a history of this stuff.
Exactly. The people given the guard uniforms didn't possess pre-existing tyrannical natures, and the prisoners weren't naturally submissive. The uniform itself acted as a complete psychological override.
Because a uniform is essentially a concentrated environment. It carries this immense invisible weight of societal expectation, authority, and historical precedent.
It's a role you step into.
Right. And Sweffing issues a direct challenge to the reader here. He basically says, if you don't believe human nature is unpredictable, try it yourself. Put on a police uniform. Act as a city manager enforcing market order. Get a sudden promotion to a high official ranking. You will change, it's a guarantee.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's because the power dynamics of a situation are the strongest environmental forces in existence.
Yeah.
When you put on that uniform, the role is screaming at your internal mixing board. It's slamming the domineering or authoritative sliders to the absolute maximum. The individual self, the free will you thought you had, is heavily compromised, if not entirely erased, by the overwhelming pressure of that assigned identity.
Which circles perfectly back to the holographic mirror concept. The essay emphasizes this with the concept of being raised by something. Like if a wolf raises a human child, that child takes on the characteristics of a wolf.
Right, the environment shapes them completely.
If humans raise a baby, it develops human traits. If celestials raise it, celestial traits. If gods raise it, divine traits. The baby is a flawless mirror, reflecting the input it receives. The input dictates the output with absolute certainty.
It really strips away the romantic notion of the unconquerable human spirit. If the environment is strong enough, the spirit conforms.
But wait, as I was going through this, a massive logical flaw kept glaring at me.
Oh, what was that?
Well, if human nature is entirely fluid-like, if we are all just water taking the exact shape of whatever cup we are poured into, if the uniform or the job or the wealth completely dictates our nature, then how does the universe maintain any stability at all?
That's a really good question.
Right. Because if you and I are constantly shifting our entire moral and behavioral makeup based on who we are standing next to, wouldn't reality just devolve into absolute formless chaos?
That is the exact tension Shrifeng addresses in the conclusion of the essay. And the answer to that logical flaw is a massive, shocking twist on everything we've unpacked so far.
Yes. Oh my gosh. After spending the entire text systematically proving that human nature is unpredictable, changeable, and entirely at the mercy of the environment, he drops this conclusion. There is an exception.
There is an exception.
Among humans, a select few, specifically, 1 in 10,000 people are chosen by destiny.
1 in 10,000. It's a fraction meant to illustrate extreme rarity. And for this tiny fraction, the rules of the blank mirror completely disappear.
The essay states their nature remains constant, regardless of the environment. You could put them in absolute poverty, unimaginable wealth, a freezing prison cell, or a royal palace, and their internal mixing board is superglued in place. Their sliders do not move, they do not adapt.
Because they serve a fundamentally different physical and spiritual purpose than the rest of humanity. Shufang explains that these individuals are tasked with a cosmic mission.
Yeah, cosmic mission.
Yes, to maintain the dynamic balance of life in the universe, they uphold the fairness of the universal law of cause and effect.
Okay, let's unpack how this actually works, because this is where the philosophy gets incredibly deep. So, 9,999 of us are clay shaped by our surroundings, but one is a rock. We are the water, and they are the cup. But how does one person's stubbornness uphold a universal law?
Think about the mechanics of the law of cause and effect. It requires parameters. It requires enforcement. If everyone in a system is infinitely adaptable water, the ocean has no shores.
Right, it just spills everywhere.
Exactly. It just spreads out into a meaningless, shallow puddle. There is no tension, no growth, no consequence.
So the 1 in 10,000 individuals are the shores. They are the immovable anchors.
Yes. Let's look at it through a microenvironment analogy to see how this physically forces a balance. Imagine an office environment filled with 9,999 normal, adaptable people.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
They naturally want to get along, so if the environment is kind, they are kind. Now, introduce the 1 in 10,000 anchor. And let's say this anchor's fixed nature is highly demanding and deeply critical. A toxic boss, essentially.
Right. And because they are an anchor, they will not soften no matter how much kindness the other employees show them. Their sliders are locked.
Exactly. So what happens to the environment? The adaptable people are forced to react. To survive this immovable rock, they have to push up their own sliders for resilience, cunning, solidarity with each other, and boundary setting.
Oh.
The immovable nature of the anchor forces the fluid nature of the masses to adapt, which creates a dynamic tension. It forces evolution. It balances the scales.
Wow. Okay, that makes it so much clearer. But here is the part of the essay that genuinely made my stomach drop.
The twist on the twist.
Yeah, because when we think of a destiny-chosen individual sent by the universe to be an anchor, our human bias immediately pictures a messiah, right? A saint, someone who holds on to absolute pure goodness even when surrounded by total darkness.
But that's not what the text says.
No. Swifeng explicitly states, quote, "They're not necessarily all angels. They may be devils," unquote. A literal devil meant to anchor the universe.
It completely strips away our comforting human bias. We want to view good as the ultimate right and evil as a mistake to be eradicated.
Of course we do.
But the cosmic physics described here speak of a dynamic balance. Sometimes the universal equation requires a constant, unwavering force of what we perceive as good. But sometimes, terrifyingly, the math of the universe requires a constant, unyielding force of evil to maintain that equilibrium.
So a destiny-chosen anchor could be a ruthless tyrant, someone who absolutely refuses to show mercy, no matter the environmental pressure to do so.
Precisely, because their cosmic mission is to be the fulcrum of adversity. If that anchor of evil wasn't there, providing the exact necessary amount of friction and suffering, the dynamic balance of the universe would collapse.
The other people wouldn't be forced to develop resilience or justice.
Exactly.
That is heavy. It completely recontextualizes history. You look back at historical figures, conquerors, despots, or even just fiercely uncompromising visionaries, people who seem completely unswayed by reason, diplomacy, or the environment around them. You have to wonder, were they the 1 in 10,000?
It's a chilling thought.
Was their inability to adapt not a psychological failing, but a literal cosmic mandate?
It forces you to view human interaction through an entirely different lens. You're no longer just dealing with difficult or wonderful personalities. You are navigating cosmic physics.
Man. Let's take a breath and zoom back out to look at this whole journey today. We started with the concept of the holographic universe, realizing that every single person holds the seed of everything from a demon to a celestial god.
Right, the ultimate blank slate.
Yeah. And we looked at how historical pressures like famine, comfort, or shifting social status pull those specific traits out of us. We examined how putting on a uniform can completely erase your free will and rewrite your personality, proving that, 99.999% of us are entirely products of our environments.
Which is humbling all on its own.
Absolutely. And finally, we arrived at the cosmic anchors, the incredibly rare, immovable few whose unchangeable natures provide the friction necessary to keep reality balanced.
It is a profound amount of information to process. And as you reflect on Rissang's concepts, I really encourage you to audit your own mixing board, look at your daily existence.
Yeah, that's a great exercise.
How much of what you firmly consider to be your core personality is actually just a reflection of the job title you hold, the city you live in, or the specific power dynamics of the people you spend your time with.
Just reflecting the room.
Exactly. If you were dropped into a completely foreign, hostile, or incredibly luxurious environment tomorrow, which of your sliders would crash to zero and which would shoot to the top?
It's an unsettling question to sit with. Are you the person, or are you just the room? And that brings us to a final thought for you to mull over as you go about the rest of your day, building on that wild 1 in 10,000 rule.
Oh, this is a good one.
Think about the people in your life, your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbors. Most of them are fluid. They adapt. They compromise. They soften when the mood is right, or they harden when the setting gets tough. But eventually, you might encounter someone whose nature never seems to bend.
We all know someone like that.
Right. Regardless of the situation, the pressure applied, the immense kindness shown to them, or the cruelty they face, they are an absolute rock. So are you just looking at someone who is deeply authentic and incredibly stubborn? Or are you looking at one of those rare, destiny-chosen anchors super glued into place to balance the universe?
That's the real question.
And if they are an anchor, how can you tell if their cosmic mission is to be an angel or a devil in your life? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.